So it sounds like you're considering making an offer. Awesome. You know, there's a lot more to an offer than just price. We're going to dive into that here. Here are a list of common offer components in Ohio and things to consider with those. The first thing to consider is purchase price. So I know there's more to it than just this, but it's going to dictate a lot of what happens in this contract. So, consider what price you want to come in at. Keep in mind, the seller can pay a portion of your closing costs. Just depends on what type of loan product you're getting. Typical closing costs are going to be in the ballpark from $3,500 to $5,000. We can ask for the seller to pay those for us. Remember, they can't contribute towards your down payment, but those closing costs can keep some money in your pocket if we're able. Number two, an attorney approval clause. So this isn't super common in offers, but you'll see it from time to time in a probate offer, or if you have a buyer that's just wants a second pair of eyes, or a seller that needs a second pair of eyes on a document, then it's a great clause to put in. We also have to communicate what type of financing we're providing. Are we getting a conventional loan, an FHA loan, a VA loan, a USDA loan, or are we paying in cash? So we got to communicate that to the seller. So just know which route that you want to go and talk through that with your lender if you have one, just to see what might be the best fit for this home. And I'll give you my 2 cents as well. We also have to decide if we're going to put an appraisal contingency in the contract. A lot of lenders are going to require this. Some might not. You might have an appraisal waiver, which is great. It makes you a lot more competitive. Or if you're paying cash, you have the choice as well. We also have to write in which fixtures and equipment that we want to convey with the home. So, if we want the dishwasher, the refrigerator, the garage refrigerator, the washer, the dryer, whatever, we got to put it in this section. Sometimes sellers are going to want to take certain things with them. Maybe they have a really special refrigerator, and they want that to go with them. So one thing to consider there, but one thing we can't do is put personal property into this. So, we can't write in, the yard tractor, especially if we're getting a loan, because it could be construed as mortgage fraud. If we're paying in cash, we could put that type of stuff in, but keep in mind we can only do so much with a loan. So inspections are important as well. So do we want an inspection? How long do we want that timeline to last? Do we want the ability to negotiate remedy in a multiple offer situation? It might make sense to waive that. In the craziness of 2022, there are cases where we had to waive our inspection in order to win. So I'll keep you posted on that part of the market. Certainly always recommend getting an inspection. Remedy, I'll leave that up to you, but this section of the contract also allows us to terminate if something is found during the inspection that just makes you extremely uncomfortable. If we're buying a condominium, Section 6.5A of our purchase agreement will dictate everything that the seller must send over within 5 days of acceptance of the offer. That includes the bylaws, the restrictions, the financials, all that other fun stuff with a condo association or an HOA. A home warranty. Do we want the ability to get a home warranty? This could be paid by the seller. This could be paid by the buyer. The typical one I use is $629 Home Guard home warranty. It covers a lot of things. I can send you the PDF if you'd like on things it covers and things it doesn't. But again, we can put that in later on, or we can negotiate that in later on with repairs. But typically I'd like to put it in the offer and be straightforward. An earnest money deposit is where we put down $1,000, $2,000, whatever, up front on the house. If we were to terminate that agreement illegally or outside the confines of the contract, then the seller would retain that money. If we were to terminate the agreement legally due to appraisal, inspection, a bad final walkthrough, whatever, then we would get that money back. And at time at closing, that $1,000 would be credited to you. as the seller or as the buyer. And finally, when we close, this is a big one. Sometimes sellers are looking for the quickest to closing. They just want to get rid of the house. Sometimes they need something a little bit longer. So, we'll communicate as agents, and I will let you know what that might be. Time in the house after closing. Sometimes sellers want a few days in the house after closing, or maybe even a few weeks. So, again, I will communicate that with the other agent and see what that might be and see what they're looking for. And we will also have 2 or 3 days prior to closing to do a final walkthrough just to verify everything is good. When it comes to writing offers, I like to leave my offers open for at least 24 hours. I just think it's the right thing to do. We will also have an additional terms and conditions page if we need to get a little fancy with it. So we can dive into real specific language that can contradict the main contract as well down there. So if there's something in there that you want changed, or if you want to ask for closing costs, this is typically where we do this. I will also have a PDF drawn up of all the things you can and can't do with an offer. That way you have this on paper and I'm not wasting 6 or 7 minutes of your time. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you have any additional questions or concerns.